In this section, we will go through a few examples of running codes in our Jupyter Notebook cells. There are two primary modes we will switch between. The first is command mode and the second is edit mode. The command mode is signaled by a blue border. This is what happens after running a cell. The edit mode is signaled by a green border, so when we click into it, we are now in edit mode. This is what happens when you move to a new cell that you have not run yet. To actually run the code in the cell, we can click the following button. You'll notice it spits out the output directly below the input cell and keeps track of each input and output number. Another shortcut to run the cell is hitting Shift, Enter, and you'll see again it ran through it. Since we weren't printing anything, there is no output. If we hit the escape button, we enter command mode. That's when we're in blue. And we can add new cells with shortcuts by using the B for below or the A for above. If we double click back into a cell, we are back in edit mode and can actually edit the code. So here, since we define this function +1 that takes x as an integer, adds 1 to it and returns y, let's run it, adding 20. We'll go ahead and run the code, and it spits out 21. And you'll see here the input number and the output number. Now what happens if we run it with a string instead of an integer? We're going to get an error. And if we get an error, you'll see the error report in the output. This is important when debugging our code. And again, pay attention to the number which shows the order of execution in our Jupyter Notebook. If we run a command, the number increases by 1. And it doesn't just have to be Python code to increase it. If we run a command with the hashtag potentially explaining what this does, +1 adds 1 to a given integer, and we run it, you'll see here it's the 5th. And these don't have to be in order. You can run code for cells in any order you desire. I may find myself doing this and will move the cells up and down for my future self so I have more context when reading it top to bottom. You can even execute a cell multiple times in a row if you were trying to debug something. So here, we run it, we get the error message, but what happens in that same cell, if we give it an input and we run it again, you'll see it goes to 7 and we get the output being 12. Multiple operations can take place in a single cell, but the cell outputs the last expression. So if we said +1 with 5, and then beneath it we said +1 with 7, we're going to get 8 here, even though it ran twice. Now, if we were to save these to a variable, so we said x equals +1, 5, and z equals +1, 7, and we run both of them, and then you'll see if we print x, we still get the number, and same if we print z. So if we have two things in a cell, both will be evaluated, but the output is only going to show for the very last line. Great. Those are really the basics for running codes in Jupyter Notebooks. In the next section, we'll look at a few miscellaneous commands and shortcuts that we'll use throughout this course.